Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is our Rise News anchor, Vimbai Mutunhiri Ekpenyong. Good morning, Vimbai.
Good morning. I walked into a very robust conversation happening off air. I hope we can keep up the energy. It's so great to be back here. And shall we get straight into the newspapers of the day? Of course, we start with this day newspaper. And we all know what is leading today, and I do begin by offering my condolences to the families of former governor of Ondo State, Akeredolu, and Gali Naba of Kano State, and of course to the people of Ondo State and Kano State, and may their souls rest in peace. This is of course the story that is dominating the front pages of the majority of newspapers here in Nigeria today, as yesterday was indeed a Black Wednesday. Now, just to steer away from that, just above the masthead, just below the masthead, is of course the visit by the Vice President to Plateau State yesterday, as Shetima condoles Plateau communities, maintains nation won't rest until they get justice, which again is an issue that you so robustly delved into earlier this morning on this program. Now, above the masthead, just below the big story, the top story there, Nigeria's Riverside LNG nears historic deal to supply gas to South Africa. A little bit of good news. So I'd like to delve a little bit into that. So when we look at Nigeria, Nigeria has the biggest gas reserves on the African continent. Then you look at a country like South Africa, whose energy sector is based on coal. And we know that South Africa is dealing with one of the worst power crises it has ever faced since its inception. So why is this huge? Because if this deal is secured to be able to export gas to South Africa is also an exporter of power to the Southern African development region. So you have Zimbabwe, Zambia, Botswana, Mozambique, Malawi, who are all going to, in turn, import whatever power is generated from South Africa. So if this deal can be struck between Nigerian company Riverside and South Africa, it is the beginning of a fantastic bilateral relation, which is the stuff that, Pan-Africanism, Pan-African dreams and economies are made of. So that's one to watch, and a strategic deal that we do hope will see the light of day in the new year and is said to be finalized in 2027. Very big one to watch. Right, we quickly move over to the Daily Trust. Daily Trust, of course, again leading with as Akeredolu dies at 67, Aiyedatiwa sworn in as Ondo governor. That's in the front page of the Daily Trust. At the top, the window on the left-hand side, mishandling of CBN investigation report can create distrust. Panic. That's from experts. This is an important conversation for us to have. As much as we are seeking redress, as much as people are seeking justice and issues that occurred over the past 9 years with the Central Bank of Nigeria to be addressed, it's very important for us to separate the individuals and the institutions. So just to take a quote in that report from the former economist and head of investors relation at UBA, that's Abiola Rasak, whilst most people, if not everyone, would acknowledge the need to correct some errors of the previous CBN leadership, including, but not just to the need to understand the contravention and governance issues that undermined the independence and effectiveness of the institution over the past 9 years, it is perhaps more important to do so in a way that does not further destroy the integrity of the system. Very important for us to ensure that we protect the stability and the security of the Nigerian financial sector, the markets, and of course the central bank. Confidence in the central bank is very critical to the economic success of this country. So hopefully this issue, this investigation will be handled in a way that doesn't shock markets. Now, straight to the Guardian newspaper. This leads with, of course, sunset for Akeredolu, new dawn for Lucky Aiyedatiwa, another focus on the events that transpired in Ondo State. Straight to the Punch newspaper. On the Punch newspaper, the image of Governor Akeredolu in his strong days. It's good to always remember the departed with positive memories. But at the very bottom of the front page, insecurity, economic hardship to worsen in 6 states. Now, this is a report from the World Bank that says that food insecurity in Borno, Kaduna, Katsina, Sokoto, Yobe, Zamfara is going to face major challenges in the coming year. That's due to poor macroeconomic conditions that are restricting access to agri inputs. So they're projecting, that's the World World Bank that there might be food insecurity crisis, specifically in those 6 states of Nigeria. Very quickly to the Vanguard before we take a look at our international papers. The Vanguard, sad day in Ondo, how Akeredolu died at 67. More details on that. Plateau death toll hits 195, hundreds of houses razed. Governor Aiyedatiwa makes new appointments. Of course, we're all looking to see how he's going to manage the 1 year that he's being given as Ondo State goes into an election year. So that's what's happening on the home front. Very quickly to our international papers. We start with the Times. The Times in UK, whose front page image is that of Jacques Delors. Now, this is the former president of the European Commission who clashed with Margaret Thatcher on the subject of European integration in the 1960s, and he has died at the age of 98. So he helped to create the single market, and he laid the groundwork for the euro while he was in office from 1985 to 1995. Very central figure, especially if you look at the state of the European Commission at the moment. A lot to dissect about whether his legacy will be remembered for good or for the contrary. Straight to the Independent, which leads with a special report on Alexei Navalny. Now, we all know this, shall I say, quote-unquote, prisoner of war. It says, free Navalny from his Polar Wolf prison colony hell. So there were suspicions that he may have been killed. However, he's now been traced to a prison cell somewhere in the Arctic Circle. Why is this significant? Because Russia is going into an election year. March 2024, Russia will go to presidential election. President Vladimir Putin will be going for his 5th term. Now, this is despite the fact that the laws of Russia only permit 2 term limits of 6 consecutive years. So that's a major story, especially we cannot forget that Russia is still at war. So this is a significant development. Next year is a significant year for this East European nation. And those are the major front pages from around the world. I'm not sure what piques your interest. Rufai.
So a couple of things pique my interest. Let me start with the foreign things today. So Delors' death piques my interest. Delors came at a time where there was a lot of understanding of what the Eurozone will be and the future we have today of the Eurozone. That was when Delors came in the 80s. And Delors was one of those firm advocates of the fact that, yes, the rate mechanism thing was not going to continue for a while, where you have to peg currencies and you have like currency pegs and you have like a floating rate peg for them across the Eurozone. And Delors set up something called the Delors Committee that he worked very hard on as regards, helping the Eurozone to translate into a single currency. That is the order of the case now. So it was a lot of work that was started, way back in the days, by the likes of Delors. And we all know the conversations between Delors and Margaret Thatcher, and Margaret Thatcher leaving and the events that snowballed into Black Wednesday, when Britain left the European, rate mechanism thing of the currency peg, and the attendant inflation that came to the economy, and how George Soros became a billionaire overnight because the Bank of England used about 14 billion pounds sterling to hedge against, to bet on the pound, but the pound kept on falling and it was falling hard. And Black Wednesday happened because things had gone really south. And we remember the very famous expression of the Chancellor of the Exchequer then, Norman Lamont, that famous story in the papers that he was having his bath in the bathroom, he was singing while the economy was sinking of some sort, and all of that politics in Europe that happened around the law. Afterwards, prior to that time, he used to be a minister out of France. He served as finance minister in France before he got that position. And Delors still did some work as regards mobilization, of people and politics in France. He passed at the age of 98, and rest is so, he has his own legacy. But Delors' legacy will be touted around, the experience around the late 80s up to 1992, thereabout, and onwards from that. Also, I'm going to talk about another story making the rounds here as regards, there was a story you took as regards the plight of people and poverty and hunger.
Punch newspaper insecurity in Borno, Kaduna, Katsina, Sokoto, Yobe, Zamfara.
Yeah. So, and that brings me back, to the conversation as regards taking responsibility and the leader of a country taking responsibility. there's a great level of distortion we've had in terms of our mental psyche and how we see leaders. And I know where this came from. This came from the years of hitherto autocratic and military dominance in our polity, where our leaders were larger than life and they were gods on their own. And pretty much the military also learnt it from a colonial mindset, a colonial outlook. Because when you look at the system of leadership, there's been constant level of repression of the people. That's what leadership have always been. And since our return to democracy, we've not had a citizenry that can really question things. And that's why when you have people that question leadership, it becomes an outlier. You talked about the insecurity in these areas. And I was making a point this morning on the need for a leader to visit at a time where there's pain. Probably, maybe we don't see these things in the same way. A president that is so quick to go for almost every event abroad, and at a very present time where he needs to be commander-in-chief, being with his people, and it's not there, speaks volumes about our country. And we need to reiterate that. We have lost a great sense of what we should have as responsiveness. And that's why we see the level of insecurity keeps going on. And what's the refrain? The refrain we normally hear is, I assure you things will be done, but nothing ever gets done. I assure you we'll stem the time, but nothing is ever done. So it starts from that level of accountability. And let me remind you a bit, I don't like comparing Nigeria and America, but you needed to see the backlash President Bush got by not visiting the victims of Hurricane Katrina on time. That can never be forgotten. But the people have become, and it comes from, there's a long history to it. So it speaks volumes about us, and it speaks volumes about our people.
All right, okay, very quickly to the foreign papers. Times of London, beyond the death, was also the big headline around Labour's potential investments in childcare. So Labour will promise big expansion of childcare. The debate has been ongoing as to them, Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party, using it as a strong point during his campaign for next year's elections. And one of the arguments they've made following the report was that investing in childcare for parents would ultimately, even though it would cost the British, because they were talking about it making economic sense, why would you put so much money? £6 billion is what they're hoping to invest, is that it will then make parents more productive, and then plowing back to being able to pay more taxes to the government. So at the end of the day, the government wins. And it's great to see, governments like that thinking about the big picture, making it better. The reason I bring that up is because we've had conversations around productivity here in Nigeria, and the fact that we don't have, and it's to investigate the reasons that hamper men and women from being productive, one of which has been identified by this government, which Labour hopes to use as a big card or big talking point in the next election. And so this is really great to see. Let's hope it will pass through. But the Education Shadow Secretary has said that this is what Labour plans to do next year going forward.
Okay, talking about Labour Party, this is still at the level of proposal. And the expectation is that this childcare, what they call modernized childcare, to target younger voters who may be starting families, is still at the level of proposal. And they are saying that is going to be in their manifesto. Now that there is everybody planning towards spring election. But it's not just the Labour Party. The Tories too have been saying they will cut inheritance tax, or what is called death tax. And there are persons who are saying, look, you are trying to rob the poor to make the rich more comfortable. So ahead of the expected spring election, both the Labour and the party and the Tories are adopting all kinds of measures to attract voters to their side. So we're waiting for the Chancellor Hunt when he gives his budget speech on March 6. So they are not likely to cut only death tax, they are also likely to cut other taxes. So in other words, politicians are the same all over the world. So that's the essence of those stories about, Labour and the Tories competing for the voters' mind. But quickly, we've talked about the death of the governor of Ondo State on this program today. We've paid tribute to him. We've reported what others have said. It just remains to add one more point, which is about the cause of his death. It's been reported now in the papers today that he died as a result of prostate cancer, and he died in Germany. Now, I think one of the lessons we can take away from here, or one of the signals, will be the need for us to do more in the area of cancer awareness advocacy in Nigeria. Worldwide, cancer is one of the major causes of death. And in Nigeria here, the commonest form of cancer is breast cancer, about 38.87%. The next one is prostate cancer, which is common among men, and it's over 27% in Nigeria. The third one is the cancer of the cervix. But what we have in terms of cancer care in Nigeria, very poor. What do we have in terms of cancer treatment research in Nigeria? We don't have anything. Most of the underprivileged people who may have cancer issues, they are not even covered by the NHIS, the health insurance scheme of Nigeria. Okay, so anybody that is poor and falls sick will not have the opportunity to go to Germany, will not have the opportunity to go to the national hospital. And even if they go to the national hospital, the major problem with medical care in Nigeria is that we're still at the level of out-of-pocket healthcare spending. And then, of course, this pharmaceutical supply chain in Nigeria is also a problem. Even for ordinary malaria, you are not sure you will get the right kind of drug. So we just hope that it's not enough to lament, to pay tributes to Governor Akeredolu. It is also important for the Nigerian government to say, how do we invest more in cancer treatment, in cancer awareness advocacy? Because we also hear that if it is detected early, you may survive it. So this, I think, is the only thing that remains to be added. Thank you very much, Vimbai. I've been looking for a way to describe you.
You're looking for it. I'm going to let you marinate in that. I know you come up with something
good. No, people have
good.
been asking me questions. Oh. Where is your Epe Young from? And I say, no, she's a Niger wife.
I love it.
You are representing the Niger wives community very well.